Hi, how you doing tonight? Welcome to The Truth Unveiled. This is Andrew Keaton with my partner D Moss, and we're going to tackle stories and we're going to tackle events that are laying out the facts and the truth. For time, we're going to get right actually into it. I want to introduce our first guest, and he is the author. I got mine right here. Red Pill Alchemy, just an awesome read. And then he has Supreme Science. His name is DeWayne Hendrix, author, and also the spokesman of Wayne Williams Free Project. Also, we have here is Alex Barber. So it's hard to. I'm going to let Alex actually later go in and tell you actually what he do. But he's a cold case extraordinaire, working on numerous cases, and he's known as somebody when you want something to be found or want something known and revealed. That's who the person that you contact that you get in touch with. So I'm gonna let Alex actually get more into it, but we're gonna get right into it with DeWayne. How real quick, how me and DeWayne connected is HBO did a series on the Atlanta child murders. They did the second documentary. And I seen after the first one, I seen an individual kind of like spreading out the facts of really what happened with the documentary, because it really didn't seem like things were what it was, especially with me knowing people that was involved with it from the first place. So I had a conversation with DeWayne Hendrix, and we actually been tight ever since. But getting the truth out, and just the information that he's providing, not just only the community, but just what's going on in the world anyway. What's going on. So how did you, and you wasn't there at the beginning, and because you was actually a little kid when all this stuff was taking it. How did you get involved with the Atlanta child murders, and what intrigued you about getting involved with it?
Okay. Well, I was a little kid that was seeing it all unfold in the public eye. And I'm from a small town called Brunswick, Georgia, which is actually 4 hours from Atlanta. But what was transpiring at that time and the way it was being covered on the news, it pretty much had parents afraid to let their children be out, past, the street lights coming on pretty much. And we were all scared, just like we lived right in the city of Atlanta. That's how bad it was. Because every day on the news for, I want to say maybe 2 or 3 years, they were finding a body, or they were reporting about the cases. This kid has been taken, and that type of thing. So when it all unfolded and they ended up convicting Wayne Williams, I was the little boy that said, there's someone right then. And I actually remember being a little kid sitting in the living room floor in my grandmother's apartment, pointing at the TV, and I said, that man didn't do that. When I grow up, I'm gonna help him get out of jail. And that's what I put in the universe at 6 years old. I was so young, I didn't even know the difference between prison and jail. So lo and behold, I end up in the city of Atlanta being involved in the entertainment industry, film school. And because I was in film, my passion became documentary film. So what ends up happening is in 2013, I'm actually working on a completely and totally different documentary. And a guy who was my friend since the first grade, who actually caught a life sentence and was in prison at Hancock State Prison with Wayne Williams, tells me, hey man, I'm in here with Wayne Williams and he wants somebody to do a documentary about his case. You'll be interested in that? And basically that's where the story of me becoming the spokesperson for the Freedom Project and everything begins right there. Because to me, it was like, the universe answering my call from the time I was 6 years old, saying that I was going to help this man when I grew up. So, I grew up, and now it's time to do what I said I was going to do when I was 6,
Yeah. So let's talk about, because you have a wealth of information. Let's talk about Just briefly, there were 2 documentaries done. I know you were supposed to be involved in the second one. Can you give the audience a clear picture of what really happened?
Okay.
Why you not in it? I mean, I want them to understand why you wasn't part of the second documentary. I'm not even going to talk about the first one because the first one was just thrown together without facts and it just really. I mean, you can talk about that, but talk about why you were excluded from the second documentary.
Well, first, we need to put that in the proper perspective because there were 2 documentaries done recently, but there have been multiple documentaries done about the Atlanta child murders in the past. So that's important for us to make sure we go on record and say that, and I'll explain to you why in a minute. But the one you're talking about was the one that was aired on Information Discovery Channel that Will Packer produced. And that's the one you're saying that they just didn't have any facts or anything like that. I actually interviewed with them for almost 3 hours. So I actually was supposed to be involved in both of them. And if you go, anybody that wants to see a segment of the interview that I did with them is actually on YouTube and on Facebook on Information Discovery Channel's sites. It's called 6 Theories Behind the Atlanta Child Murders or something like that. But I actually interviewed with them for almost 3 hours. They didn't include the interview for obvious reasons. And then the one that you're talking about in particular is the one that was produced by Jay-Z and John Legend that ended up being on HBO. Right, that's the one you're talking about.
Yes. So what I want you to do is give the audience a clear picture from beginning to end, like what you told me of what happened with that documentary.
Okay. I don't know if I want to do that because I want to say some of that for the documentary. Okay. But I will say this, so that people understand that Jay-Z and John Legend ended up being producers on the documentary, and I actually had a sit down or a conference call with the developmental director for John Legend's company years prior. And I'll reveal the person's name and everything in the documentary, and I'll explain the whole story. We were supposed to talk for 30 minutes. We ended up almost talking for 2 hours. After that, the production company that at the time I was in agreement with to do the documentary started entering into talks of doing the actual documentary with John Legend being the celebrity attached to it. And I was supposed to be one of the producers on this documentary. And then what ends up happening is another production company, which is called Show of Force, they enter into the picture and the deal gets strong arm and they have Jay-Z's name attached to the documentary. So for the people that saw that documentary, that's why Wayne Williams didn't interview for that documentary. The interview footage that they saw was actually from a pre-existing documentary that was done called Reclamation. And the Reclamation documentary was on YouTube and all over the internet, and it got scrubbed because Jay-Z, HBO, the production company, I don't know who did, but they bought the rights to it so that they could use the footage that the guy who produced that particular documentary had on Wayne Williams, so it would look as if Wayne Williams interviewed and participated and approved of the documentary that they did, but that's not true.
Why are there so many documentaries on the Atlanta child murders?
You said why are there?
Why?
It's been a mechanism for people to exploit and make a lot of money off of. It's still one of the most polarizing events that have taken place in modern history. You know, when you talk about these children that lived in such close proximity to one another, like a lot of these kids knew one another, you know, and they were just being taken and found murdered, and the families were given no justice. As you're going to learn when Alex starts to explain about one of the killers, the guy basically was a genius, and he just ran circles around the people who were trying to find him. You know, so it's an enigma. It's one of those things that it's been an ever evolving wheel, you know, until now. Now that, you know, we pretty much have connected a lot of the dots, you know, we'll be able to provide the public with definitive information that will prove once and for all that Wayne Williams should be exonerated and he should have never been in prison.
Never should. All right, so I'm gonna jump to Alex right quick. Alex, how did you meet DeWayne, and what brought you interest to helping out in Atlanta child murders?
Okay, he was on mute. Okay, we can hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, my initial interaction began in.
You're echoing, bro.
You got echo.
It might be because you got a computer and a phone on or something.
Yeah, I got a computer, not a phone. Hold on a second.
Okay.
Let me fix this real quick.
Okay. While he's doing that, DeWayne, how has the city of Atlanta, with far as providing information? I know they've changed mayors over the time, and we're going to get into that a little bit later. But how is law enforcement in Atlanta, and how's the city been receptive for you getting information and opening up the case? Because I know the mayor did open the case back up. So how receptive have they been for you to get information?
What's that? No.
Nothing. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. They haven't, you know, they've avoided me basically, because I'm unwavering, I'm uncompromising. So I've been avoided completely and totally by law enforcement, by any you know, the district attorney, the mayor, and none of them have tried to even give me an audience to be able to conversate with them.
Okay. So I know there's people have gained political you know, we'll talk about that later. So Alex is now, you straighten out the situation, Alex. So
I hope so.
Yeah.
We'll have an echo.
Yeah, echo. There are two devices.
Yeah, it's probably
Okay. You still have an echo, Alex? So DeWayne, right? While Alex.
Yeah, I still have an echo, guys.
Okay. All right.
Is Jamie Lynn watching it, bro?
So DeWayne, let's
you watching?
Yeah. Why they?
Might be
Yeah.
too close.
Why they fixing that? Let me.
Okay.
Jimmy, you watching?
Let's go into the first attorney for Wayne Williams, and explain what happened with that situation, because she actually wasn't a defense attorney at all. Anyway, how did she get involved with Wayne Williams?
Okay. Well, she wasn't the first attorney. The first attorney was a man named Tony Axum.
Okay.
And Tony Axum should have been the guy that took these cases to court. But he ended up not being the guy because the lady Mary Welcome ended up being on the case. And there's some things that I'll explain about her involvement in the case. There's maybe some people who've known that have seen me express my disdain for her and her involvement in the case. But basically, she was ill-equipped to provide defense for a homicide. She had never defended any clients before for homicides. And basically she gave a very, very bad defense for Wayne Williams. For one, Wayne Williams should have never been on that witness stand.
Right.
You know, he should have never been on the witness stand. And she's actually the person that told Wayne Williams, you need to fight back on the witness stand. So we'll talk about that more in the upcoming documentary that we're going to do.
Okay. What have and she admitted in the second documentary, she admitted actually she made a mistake, and has really been almost to tears when she was interviewing and talking into that.
Right. Right. She said, blame it on her, is what she said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What has how cooperative have the FBI been in this investigation when you call them to get information?
Alex could probably answer that better for you than me.
If I'm able. Still got an echo. Give me a second.
All right. So DeWayne, take us back on why Alex is fixing this.
Okay.
We still can get in. I know there's certain things you want to hold off and certain things you want to say. Far as the parent, out of the children that have been taken away from us, how many of the parents are you still connected with?
You see, I would say about 8 of the families.
Mm-hmm. Is there are there any of the families that don't want anything to do with this, or
Absolutely
plays, or they feel like they have closure already, or?
Nah, they don't feel like they have closure, but they just don't want nothing to do with it because they've been let down so many times. You know, the cases have been reopened multiple times. There have been multiple documentaries done. There have been TV shows done, a TV series done about it. Families have been interviewing and rehashing the pain. And, you know, some of them at this point, they just don't want anything to do with it.
So take us back to how many children were murdered. What area, paint a picture of the area in Georgia that we ever had. I know you did that a little bit earlier, but paint that picture again. What type of area it was, and just the whole climate at that time. Because if I don't be mistaken, this happened in the middle also of the Olympics too.
No.
It happened after, or I mean, happened during it, and some were part of it. Is that correct or not?
No.
Just clarify that up to me.
No. No.
Okay.
The Olympics were in Atlanta in '96.
Okay.
Yeah. So the Atlanta child murders, depending on who you talk to, started in 1979. Mm-hmm. There's multiple theories about that. I don't really want to get into that part of it. And also there were many, many murders that didn't make the official list that was created. Mm-hmm. So when you look at the official list that was created, there are 29 murder victims, and I think 6 or 7 of them are adults, and then the rest are children. So 22, 23 in all children were murdered, and that were on the list. It's a known fact that children actually kept dying after Wayne went to prison, and there were murders still taking place in the city of Atlanta. And there were other murders that were taking place during the time that they say that the Atlanta child murders were taking place, but they weren't put on the list. You know.
And why do you think that was? Were they in the same area, or were they in different areas of Georgia, or why do you think that was?
I can't even tell you, to be honest with you, why. Because when they supposedly created the list that they created, they called them pattern cases, but the murders weren't the same type of killing. So some of the murders on the list, for instance, Edward Ho Smith was shot. Some of them were strangled. Some of them were stabbed to death. Yusuf Bell was bludgeoned to death. So it's all these different anomalies that make it questionable as to why they considered it a pattern, or why they considered the cases that they considered to be the ones that were on the list versus the ones that weren't on the list.
Okay. So how many of the murders was Wayne Williams convicted of?
He was convicted of 2 adults. He was convicted of Jimmy Ray Payne and Nathaniel Cater.
Okay, so none related to any of the child.
No.
Okay.
His conviction wasn't related to any of the children.
Okay. Yeah.
Wow.
Do you think that
Andrew, let me ask a question. Do you think, is there a reason why the media never focused on any of the murders after Wayne Williams was convicted? Is there any speculation around that?
Absolutely. I mean, because they were trying to make it go away. Because of the fact that when you talk about something like this happening, it hurts the city's economy.
Right.
It looks bad on the current regime as far as political officials.
Yeah.
It makes them look ill-equipped to be able to protect their citizens, so on and so forth. So many different reasons why they wanted it to go away.
Well, how long? Oh, something's really loud. How long after Wayne Williams' conviction did those murders go on? I mean, is it still an ongoing thing? I mean, I've heard rumors that we still have young people disappearing.
Absolutely. I mean, that's always been going on. But as far as the similar murders and things that were taking place in Atlanta, some people have speculated that they kept going all the way up into 85.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And real quick, let's let folks digest that. Alex, can you say something? Let's see how you sound this now with the new media.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's better.
All right, great. All right.
Okay.
Now you
So
guys want me to pick up where I fit in?
Yes. So how did you meet DeWayne, and how did you feel compelled to get involved into this with your background? And also, before you start, tell us a little bit about your background and what you do.
I'm kind of like the guy you go to when you need answers and you're stumped. I've never had any actual legal background. I'm self-taught. I have a high-level IQ of 161. I kind of see things a little different manner than the average person would, I guess. My beginning started in 2007 when the Zodiac movie was first released. I believe it was March, by David Fincher. I went to go see the movie. Found out that there were some ciphers that they mentioned in there that hadn't been solved. I took a look at the first one. The my name is cipher. It's like 13 symbols. And I worked on it over the weekend and was able to figure it out. It took me approximately 5,000 attempts. I posted online in one of the Zodiac forums. And within like 48 hours, I received a phone call from the perpetrator. He knew where I lived. He knew my address, knew my family, my name. Kind of congratulated me. Asked me if I wanted to play a game. That's how it all started. I was using a sports book in Las Vegas. It used to be called Bodog for wagering on the weekends. And when I first answered the phone call, it said Las Vegas as the number. And when I answered it, his first words were, "Do you want to play a game?" And I assumed that this was somebody trying to, talk me into kind of, betting on some more wagers or games at that time. And when I denied, I wasn't interested, he continued to give me information that he shouldn't have had access to. And at that time, I had actually posted the cipher that I decoded online, and I had used my actual name. I didn't feel like the Zodiac Killer was still alive in 2007. Well, I was incorrect. I took down the post, and me and my family relocated within 3 months. We moved. At that time, having spoken to my in-laws, they advised me, taking their knowledge into perspective, I should leave it alone. So I pretty much packed up my file cases and put them in the attic, and they collected dust until 2017. At that time, I saw a flash on the news that Dave Toschi had passed away. He was the infamous detective that tracked the Zodiac in San Francisco for many years. I dusted off the files and started working on it again, and I was able to get that name back out that I had initially decoded. And I worked on the other ciphers, and using the same formula, I was able to figure all of them out, and they're pretty detailed. At that point, I started to track them from that point in time, meaning 1969. I figured I had to figure out where they came from before I could find out where they went. I traced them all the way back to their birth, followed them in every location through realty records, tax exemptions, phone numbers, social media when it got into later years, relatives, friends, newspaper posts and printings. And I was able to link everything because they actually led me to the crimes rather than me trying to link them to the crimes.
Okay.
And when I was done, I ended up finding 103 murders, unsolved murders total. And I can link them to. And there was 2 of them. The individual, the Lawrence Klein, who's known as Lawrence K. or Kane, was one of the primary suspects. When I initially got the first name and anagrammed it, and I Googled it in 2007, that name came up with a few others, and I was Googling each name that was provided to me. And when I hit his name, automatically it came up as one of the top suspects in the Zodiac case. So I actually went from there as far as tracking him down. And then I found an associate that was working with him in unison over the years. They worked together and separate. So at that point, I just followed through history.
Wow. Now, would they do you think they had anything to do with the child murders?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, initially the Zodiac, when he wrote the first letter where he actually threatened children, it was, I believe, the Paul Stein letter of October 13th, 1969. At the bottom of the letter, he wrote that kiddies make, find targets when they come hopping off the bus. That was the first time he ever inclined as far as harming children. After that, I mean, with the Paul Stein, I was able to link it to DC Phantom. So he pre-planned these murders as far as a year and a half in advance. And I was able to trace that. I mean, I was able to share some of that with you earlier. In the beginning, like the Paul Stein case, Mr. Klein lived at, I believe it was 217 Eddy Street in San Francisco. Klein actually picked up his client or his fare, I believe it was Mason and Geary Street, which was approximately 2.5 blocks away from Klein's residence. Now, this is no knowledge online. This is nothing that I actually discovered. Right. The original cab log says it was Washington and Maple. And police speculated, since he had moved from Maple to Cherry Street, that when they pulled up initially, there must have been someone walking a dog or a pedestrian there, and it spooked him. Well, I come to figure out that wasn't the case. He had always planned for it to be Washington Cherry. When he moved forward, the Washington Cherry was a link to DC. When you think of Washington and Cherry, what do you think of? You have Washington, George Washington and Cherry Tree.
Right, and the Cherry Tree, yeah.
Right, which links you back to DC. So I followed that, and then on the 22nd of October that year, 69, he had called the Oakland Police Department in California and wanted to speak to an attorney by the name of Melvin Belli, which is similar to what happened in the OCC case with Bruce Dano. He actually got online. It is his voice, believe it or not. I have an audio clip from 1943 that I did an analysis on that actually connects him to that recording that you can hear on YouTube. And he said he wanted to meet him in DC, Daly City. So Belli actually went to Daly City and waited on him. He no-showed, of course.
Right.
But that was the second clue. And then in December 7th, he mailed another letter in, which states, I believe the way he worded it is Let me find it here just to make sure I don't want to mislead anybody.
Right.
It says the will be a cop when he's discussing, the murders. Now, the doesn't make any sense, of course.
Right.
Some people think he meant they will be a cop. It's actually the old Hebrew term, thee, thy, thou, though.
Mm-hmm.
Thee will be the cop. He's actually saying that he's going to portray himself as a police officer.
Mm.
So the following week, he mailed the second letter, which is the Fairfield 2 letter from December 16th. And in that letter, it says that the state is in trouble. The state is State of the Union. And the second line or third line states, I'm going for the government life. Don't forget me.
Mm.
So when you think government, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Washington, D.C. That's where the Capitol building is. So he's already announced that much. There's a hiatus that he disappeared for almost 3 years. Everybody thought he was either deceased, locked up, or possibly in a mental ward. Well, when he returned in January, at the end of January 1974, there's something called the Exorcist letter. Now, when I got a hold of this letter, it set off, lights in my head. First off, the Exorcist, why would he put that in there? Well, the Exorcist is filmed where? Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C. Yeah.
That is correct. And the doctor in the movie that treats Reagan's name is what? Klein. Okay. So then you go down and you see the small little quote he does from the Gilbert and Sullivan Mikado, which is Titwillow, Titwillow, Titwillow. Well, there was one letter that was actually left on the victim in D.C. And that letter, which they believe was written by her under distress, was actually his handwriting. And the first line, it says he spells insensitivity wrong. It looks like he puts 5 eyes. Well, if you look closely at it, what I sent you earlier, the outside eye and the continuance eye is an exclamation point. It's not an eye. If you look closely. So he was actually putting emphasis on the word tit. Now, this letter wasn't released to the public until the 2000s. And we're talking 1971, 72.
Mm.
So in this Exorcist letter that he sent in 74, he puts the Titwillow in there. So he's linking the Phantom with the word tit, enclosed within the 2 exclamation points with the actual Zodiac letters return. And if that wasn't enough, if you look at the bottom, there's things that I call hieroglyphics.
Mm-hmm.
Many people have dismantled them and moved them around to spell different names. But if you take them as they are and you just arrange them, it spells his name Klein. It's clear as day.
Mm-hmm.
So if that wasn't enough, one of his victims, the third victim, Mrs. Crockett, she actually called home and said a white man had kidnapped her, abducted her, and that she was in Virginia, and that he was sending her home in a cab, of all things. Well, within 8 hours, they found her staged on the side of the highway. Now, she's actually pointing in front of a sign. That sign says Kenilworth, okay? The first 5 letters of the sign, if you anagram it, was a spell. It spells Klein. So right there, he's left you 4 or 5 clues right out of the gate. It was too hot for him. He went on a hiatus for about 3 months and came back. From there on out, he's left little clues in every letter. These are things that the FBI and Quantico and local law enforcement, state level, they never picked up on them. That's the way my brain works. I see things on another level. So with that coming back and the confidence that he mailed what's called the Red Phantom letter in 74. That also is a reference. The Red Phantom, Freeway Phantom. He's just little things that he applies all the way up through into Ak-Kid. He did the same thing. There's a letter called the Zodiac letter in Ak-Kid. For those of you who have a copy of it or have access to the internet, if you pull it up, there's 3 letters that are actually highlighted. There's an underline under the word bodies. He underlines the D. Okay. He underlines the C with a hyphen on top of it, and then at the very end, the P with a hyphen. So you got DCP. That's the DC Phantom. It's actually right in the letter. I've got probably 1,000 pieces of evidence here to link him to all the murders.
So he was using. We know there was more than one, as you stated. Were they working in unisex like East Coast, West Coast, or they were, because it seemed like they were strategically doing this and mapping out what they were doing?
Absolutely. They planned ahead. Like I said, I can track down to at least a year and a half in advance on some of these murders. I mean, even with the OCCK, excuse me, on the initial wanted poster, they mentioned the perpetrator from the eyewitness that he had an athletic build. Well, 3 months later, Zodiac mails a letter talking about having a Scotch tape reel, which was found in that kid. It's a 10.5-inch Scotch tape reel, which is a audio video reel. And also, he uses the term "I am athletic." After researching over 2,500 letters online from multiple serial killers, not one of them used the word athletic. Not until he did. And this was 3 months after the poster for Oklahoma, or the Oakland County child murders.
Yeah. You mentioned before that the FBI really couldn't piece this together. I got a question, and I think DeWayne might want to put this in the documentary, or you do. Do you think how the FBI handled the Atlanta child murders, do you think they had a inclination that he was there because of some of the actions and to hurry up and put it on Wayne Williams before this hits the public or anything? Do you think they knew something about that?
Okay, well, here's the big kaboom here. I was able to locate a letter in the FBI files through the Freedom of Information Act that they provided the police and the FBI Wayne Williams' name before December of 1980. Now you do the math.
Wow.
I mean, they gave Wayne's name up to the FBI nearly 6 months prior to the bridge incident. I have that letter.
Wow.
Yeah, it's stunning. And then on top of that, let me explain this. After he was prosecuted in 82 and early of 83, they attempt to collect the reward by going to the Harrisburg FBI building, walking in it and trying to collect the reward. And then when they were shunned away, saying that we don't have the money, go see Atlanta, he actually wrote a letter to the director, Webster, the director of the FBI at that time. And Webster told him the same thing. I have that letter also.
So this is the supposedly Zodiac killer who gave Wayne Williams' name up.
That's just correct. The handwriting matches.
Wow.
They actually they staged it so that Wayne could take the fall.
Wow. In the FBI, well, it was in the FBI's files. You said 6 months before they even convicted him or to put them up. You said
the letter is dated that he had provided Wayne's information, his residence, his name, personal information before December of 1980.
Wow.
So I'm sorry, Dale. Go ahead.
I know you can't speak for them, but what would be the rationale for them to submit Wayne's name and information? And then, like, the way you have kind of deciphered this information, how receptive are the authorities or law enforcement to the information that you have? I'm just curious.
Okay, first part of the question is, this is the first time they've done that. They framed a man by the name of William Hirons in 1945-46. They framed a gentleman by the name of Paul Freshour in the late 70s, early 80s. They framed a gentleman by the name of McCumber in the late 70s. And now this isn't just my speculation. I have documentation to prove this. You know, I have a letter that was mailed to Freshour in prison. I'm gonna give you guys a little treat here. There's a letter or a postcard that's referred to as the 1990 Zodiac Christmas card. On the front of that card, there's a snowman that's wearing a Groucho Marx glass and mustache. It says "Your secret friend." Okay, this was mailed on the 20th of December 1990. On the 21st of December 1990, Paul Freshour had his first parole hearing in Ohio. He was denied. Within 3 days, they wrote a letter to him, and he was in lockdown. And the letter actually states, when we set them up, they stay set up.
Wow. Yeah, is it far-fetched to say that they had secret clearance or military or?
Well, they both have military backgrounds back during World War II. But I think that some of the training that they had received from the government helped, especially in the ciphering and decoding part of it. And if you go back through the history of Lawrence Klein or Lawrence Kane or Kay, he has multiple aliases. They even say in the newspaper articles, the people that are there on the charges that he received for felony charges, burglary or larceny charges, that he would get out of it. He knows the law inside and out. And then with him telling you in the Fairfield letter from December 7th, he's telling you that he's going to take the position as a police officer. I mean, the only way that a Caucasian can operate within a dominant black neighborhood, you have to have one or two things. Either you have a religious background, which they feel comfortable with, or you have a place of authority, like a law enforcement officer.
Right.
That's how he's able to interact and get into the community and get out with the children without setting off any flags. And another thing I didn't finish, that card, the 1990 card with the Groucho Marx on the snowman that was mailed to Paul Freshour. Well, Paul Freshour's brother-in-law was murdered in a staged accident on, I believe it was August 21st of 1977. Guess who died on that same day? Groucho Marx.
Wow.
The same card with the Groucho Marx face that was mailed on the day that his parole was denied.
Wow.
So you got to understand, these guys are diabolical. They're planning this stuff way ahead of time. Right. I mean, they're plotting it out so that they're covered. They actually made this into a fine science. I hate to say it.
Yeah. So that treat that you gave us, Alex, and I appreciate that about the letter in his files. DeWayne, take us back to that bridge scene, because that's very, very important with the letter that Alex just said.
Correct.
That was in there. Take us back to that whole scene and how the law enforcement and FBI at that time had to lie in that situation. And I'm not saying you were calling them liars. I'm calling them a lie because of what I just heard now with the letter in there, and even just with the information you talk. Take us back to that scene and explain to the audience what really happened, and then we can examine back to the letter that Alex just told us.
Yeah, and I think it's important to frame it too, because there's been so many false depictions of what happened on the bridge that evening. So, for instance, when you watch Mindhunter, right, and you watch what they did, they made it seem as if it was all of these people out there and it was all of these FBI agents. And as soon as Wayne got on the bridge and crossed the bridge, all of these people swarmed on him. Mm-hmm. In all actuality, Wayne wasn't even stopped on the bridge. He was stopped up the road, some miles up the road on 285. Mm-hmm. So, for those that aren't familiar with the city of Atlanta and where the Jackson Parkway Bridge sits, it basically separates Cobb County from Atlanta. And supposedly this was the last day of their stakeout on the bridge.
Ironically.
Ironically,
yeah. Right. So Wayne got off of Interstate 285, and he got off on what's called a South Cobb Drive exit, turn right. He went, by the time, once you turn right, the Jackson Parkway Bridge is maybe a quarter of a mile from the exit, maybe half of a mile at the most. He crossed the bridge. He pulled over to the right into a liquor store, convenience store, and looked for a payphone. The payphone wasn't there. He pulled out of that parking lot, drove up a little farther up to Bolton Road, turned back around, went back towards 285 because he was looking for an apartment that night or a location for somebody that he wanted to audition for music.
Right.
This is what Wayne told me that happened that most people don't know. As he's approaching the bridge, there's a car that is in the middle of the road that has to move in order for him to proceed. Mm-hmm. He drives towards the bridge. He crosses the bridge. He doesn't stop on the bridge. In the actual testimony of the 4 people that were out there that night, because it was 2 police recruits, 2 people that never were cops.
On a major out like that? Wow.
Yeah, 1 Atlanta police officer and 1 FBI agent. Okay. He crosses the bridge. He goes and he gets on the interstate. According to what was said, one of the police recruits supposedly said, "Is there someone on the bridge? I heard a splash." The other police recruit was at the top right-hand side of the bridge, and he says, "Yeah, I just moved out of the headlights." It would be physically impossible for someone to just move out of the headlights and a body to already have hit the water. So this guy says, "I heard a splash. Is there someone on the bridge?" And this guy who's up at the top says, "Oh, yeah, I just moved out of the way of the headlights." So this is a matter of seconds. This isn't a matter of a few minutes. So in the matter of seconds, Wayne Williams supposedly crossed over into incoming traffic, discarded a body, got back in his car, and was back in the car driving again.
And that's testimony too, really.
That's in testimony.
Wow.
That's not DeWayne Hendrix saying that. That's not Wayne Williams saying that. That's what's in testimony.
Let me ask this question, and like I said, you might want to save it for the documentary, because I know you're still talking about the bridge. Do you think, first of all, do you think there was a splash, and do you think that it's a possibility that it could have been the Zodiac killer or somebody that was dumping bodies while somebody was watching out? Now I'm just assuming. I'm
No.
conspired. So there was no splash at all.
No, there was no bodies being thrown off bridges. Alex can attest to it. Some of the victims were found with all kinds of other evidence surrounding their body, and we have a strong opinion on why it was, but we're gonna save that for the documentary. Okay. But one of the things that, I don't know if you saw the live stream that I did at the press conference, but one of the things that I told the reporter is that Wayne's attorney had a and I can't think of the actual term right now for is it a geologist? Yeah, geologist studied the Chattahoochee River in which the body was supposedly dumped in. And the Chattahoochee River has something called an eddy in it, which means that the land rises to a certain point and it slows the flow of the river. So what would have happened is, if a body had been discarded at the Jackson Parkway Bridge, it would have stopped right there at that eddy, and it couldn't have traveled to where the body was actually found, which was about 2 miles away from the bridge, down on the Cobb Parkway side. I mean, on the Cobb County side.
You also have to remember,
the body
guys,
would have stopped right there.
The coroner report initially said that his body was in the water for 5 to 7 days. That's documented. Right. I mean, right. and then they go back on that when we go to court. I don't understand how that's possible. I mean, right. It's like you're trying to make the crime fit the perpetrator.
Right.
You know, Wayne Williams was not a very large individual, as you know.
Right.
He's short in stature and didn't weigh very much. So, I mean, all of us, I'm sure somewhere along the line, we've been at a party and, you know, you have a friend that passes out, you try to pick him up. So this, Nathaniel Cater, he was, I believe it was 6'7", 100 and, 60, 70 pounds, depending on what report you look at, between the coroner and his police file.
Yeah, he was 6 feet.
Yeah, that's dead weight. So you're trying to tell me this little guy comes across the bridge. So he passes a law enforcement unit onto the bridge. He stops. He opens his door, which activates the interior light, gets out, removes this individual who's larger than him, that's dead weight, either drags or carries him over, lifts him up 4 feet, and then flips him over and gets back in his car. And nobody sees this. I mean, within 32 seconds, if you want to get technical, nobody sees this happen. They just hear a splash and then see headlights, right? So if you're on one side of the bridge, now I've measured this bridge, you're looking approximately 150 to 200 yards, okay? In the dead of night, it's just before 3 a.m., okay? You're going to see headlights on a bridge. I don't care who you are. I mean, Stevie Wonder can see headlights, all right? And you don't see the brake lights or the car shut off or the interior light. And this little guy's carrying this dead weight, throwing it around like, you know, he's a superstar. I mean, there's physics that come into this. It don't add up.
All right.
And then you can't get him on any hair analysis or any fingerprints on any of the victims.
Wow.
You gotta go with carpet fibers.
We're gonna definitely get into the carpet fiber piece in a minute. But real quick, DeWayne, let us know who Wayne Williams is, because when I found out, it was told from a few, he was a very interesting young man, and at the age of 12, he had a radio station in his house. You know, he was very interesting. Tell us a little bit, give us an insight on who he was, and then Alex, follow up with that, and why do you figure that he was set up by those guys after DeWayne finished it?
Like you said, he owned a radio station at 12 years old. Wayne ended up getting into activism. Little known fact about him, he got into activism when he was like 11 or 12 years old because his friend got attacked by a racist store owner in an Atlanta neighborhood, and it caused a riot. And Wayne actually got hit in the head with a nightstick by a police officer when he was like 11 or 12 years old. When Andy Young met Wayne Williams, he said that's possibly the smartest kid he had ever met in his life. He was known to be a child prodigy. He was involved in photography at a very early age. He began to produce records. You know, for the people who say the things that they've said about him being doing it so he could be around children and things of that nature, when you actually get to hear the music that he was producing, I mean, if you go back in that time, he was a very promising young music producer as well. I mean, there was genius in his music, you know, and this is coming from somebody who got the last name Hendrix, you know, very, very talented producer. So, you know, he was also involved in working for radio stations. He used to service records and things of that nature as well. So, you know, he was definitely a different cat, but he was very involved in the community, and he was very astute in, you know, many technical skills, many technical sciences. You know, he was in the studio, he was being paid to be a producer, and even what's even more important for people to understand, we're now in contact with the man who actually wrote the receipt to Wayne Williams the night that he was supposedly seen with Nathaniel Cater. So we're gonna be able to expose that lie once and for all as well.
And Alex, with the piece about why you think they set him up, or, you know, because I'm pretty sure they was close to the case and they were understanding what was going on.
Well, absolutely. They definitely followed the news media. And an example of that is once the news announced that the law enforcement was collecting fibers and hairs from the victims, the whole MO changed to where they started dumping the bodies in the water or near the water. And they were wearing nothing but their undergarments or their underwear. So they were following the news, which they have a history of doing. You have to realize that Oakland County finally admitted that their 4 victims all had white dog hairs, you know, similar to Atlanta. You also got to know that they had fibers. and the DC Phantom had both of them also. So, and then I did research on Klein and found out that he owned 2 poodles. And I dug a little bit deeper, and they own something called a Phantom Poodle. Have you ever heard of that name?
I'd never heard of that.
You need to Google it. A Phantom Poodle is a larger poodle that has a white base with black tips. They have multiple color sequence, but that's how they got Wayne too. They said it was his German Shepherd. But in the FBI files, the first 5 species they listed did not include a German Shepherd. You know, and then they warp it to make it fit when it comes court time. But here I have the connection to the DC Phantom and also the OCCK crimes, and they all have fibers and they all have white dog hairs. You know, and I can place them there. You know, I have a letter that was written to Dr. Bruce Danto. The 2 perpetrators, one is named Alan, and he talks about Frank, and they give a detailed history of, you know, what was happening and how they did it and how guilty they were, and they felt bad and wanted to meet, to place an ad in the newspaper saying that the trees bloom in 3 weeks. Then you go to the Ak letters that was never released to the public, and we have an identical letter almost in there. You know, talking about Vietnam vets and, you know, somebody that's in the community. They're sorry, they feel bad about it. You know, it's almost like a regurgitation of what was written approximately 4 years earlier.
Wow. So can jump into right quick, since we're talking about hairs and fibers, talk a little bit, because a major part of the case was the carpet fibers. Talk a little bit about that, DeWayne.
Well, the trilobal fibers, they call it.
Alex,
and they tried limiting this to DeWayne Williams because there was a limited amount of carpet that was produced. But I did find in the files also that some of the main manufacturers stated that these fibers were not used for residential purposes.
Correct.
They were actually used in automobiles. Now that you're trying to tell me that Wayne Williams had a residence in Oakland County, he also had a residence in DC. Okay, that had the same or similar fibers with the dog hairs. And they're trying to link him to his residence. So some of these kids were kept for days at a time. We have repeated reports of some of these children calling home, saying they're about to die, calling a place of employment, you know, saying that, you know, they're being held. You have Caucasians, which was Klein and MS, calling the residents and telling the parents, hey, I got your child. We have the Klein calling Rockdale Police Department on numerous occasions, telling them where the bodies are located.
Wow.
You know, you have a Caucasian male who's calling the police department and telling them where to look for the bodies. Now, when they go out and they're searching, you know, they're searching a mile off where he told them. He becomes enraged and calls back. He's flustered. So he tells them again where it's at, and he says, by the way, I'm going to add another child there. Okay. So then you got Luby Jeter, which is in the letter. It's called the Ghost Killer letter. He says you finally found Luby. Keep looking, you'll find another.
Wow.
Okay. And then you got Richardson, a young lady by the name of Lisa James, who actually witnesses Klein in his blue Chevy with California tags, mind you, abduct Richardson outside the park. And she gives a sketch. That sketch is actually on the Zodiac Connection. If you look online for Facebook, it's a spitting image of him. And then you have Patrick Baltazar that actually sees him. Okay. He chases him and his 10-year-old friend. They call the task force. He files a complaint, a detailed complaint with the task force. Okay. He circles back probably to get the tag number. He's never seen again. Okay. He's abducted. His 10-year-old friend gets chased home and hides under his bed. Klein kicks in his door, ransacks his house. Okay. Leaves, calls back 3 hours later and says, your son's dead within the next 48 hours. He knew that this 10-year-old had got a up-close view of him. Okay. So then the kid reports in the police report. 3 days later, he's following him from school. He again follows him home. His mom's at home. The guy, Klein tries to break into the house again. The mother starts screaming. He runs to the window. She can actually identify him by the color of his eyes and the scar on his face, which Klein received in 1962 when his car impacted a larger cement truck. Okay, this is all documented in a medical report. So he leaves. He starts to grow a scrub of a beard, which is the report you see later on when it's approximately 3 weeks apart. It's the same individual with scruff. And then you read in the top corner of the actual police sketch. It identifies him. It says bushy eyebrows, which is another report that a police officer made in 1974 when he pulled him over. He had a victim in the car by the name of Dana Law. She had been shot. The sheriff pulled him over in the middle of the desert, didn't have communication. The CB was out of range and let him go with her body in the car. Okay.
Wow.
He identified Klein. Okay. So this is another time he got away. All right. So identifies the eyebrows, the California tag, the make and model of the vehicle, the scar. Okay. And then, then the boy sees him again on the 17th at his grandmother's location. He's tracking this boy because this boy can identify him. He's doing everything in his power to eliminate this child. Okay. And thank God the kid got away. But it got too hot, and then there's this small gap of 2 months, and then he returns again. I call it a hot spot. When it gets too hot, the media is all over you. You're on the front page of the news. Everybody's walking the streets with bats and looking for you. You let it cool off. Well, he had went back to OCCK, and there's a young lady by the name of Kimberly King. Now, this is a catcher. She's abducted after midnight. She's out. She phones her sister. Sister says, go home immediately. She disappears, okay? In Atlanta, now this is September, late September of 1979. When Zodiac shows back up in the Atlanta area, okay, there's a young girl found by what was called a Columbia Mall. That was its name. It has a new name currently, but she's a Jane Doe. She's unidentified, right?
It's the Avondale Mall now.
Correct. If you go 3/4 of a mile up from where the mall is, you have where Terry Pugh was abducted. Okay. When Terry Pugh his remains are located, he's wearing a blue windbreaker with the name Kim on the back of it.
Wow.
Okay. Kim on the back of a windbreaker when they find him. That's their clue of telling you, hey, people aren't connected to OCCK to Act Kids yet. You have a young lady by the name of Kimberly King who's gone disappeared. Then you have the body found. This is Jane Doe to this day. And then you have him found up the street, where he was abducted with a windbreaker with Kim on it. There's always a clue. They always leave a clue. That's when they never lie. I got to tell you this, they never lie.
Yeah. So is it so much to say that back to DeWayne's original statement, because of the area, Atlanta blooming at that time, most of the kids we know were more from the poor side of the town, that
Correct.
They knew some of this stuff and they kept it quiet because they didn't want to arouse the area. Is that safe to say that they knew a lot of this, or it's not safe to say that?
I mean, you have to understand a lot of these children were involved in pedophilia, whether it's for a means of obtaining finances or money. We're talking about, this was a difficult time. There was, money back then was, I think I read the average income was less than $2,000 a year for the household, a year. Okay. And then you have Uncle Tom, which is this pedophile that's bringing all these kids to his house and, having his way with them. And there's at least 10 kids that can be identified at his residence. All right. And it's this pedophile ring that's going on. Now, I don't believe Klein and MS were directly involved in the ring, because their letters, it's almost like, it's kind of weird. It's almost like they, even though they're kidnapping and murdering these children, they have some kind of, how should I put this? They despise pedophiles to a certain level, even though they may be considered one because some of the kids were violated. But if you look at the records, that wasn't necessarily disclosed to the public, Miss Catherine Leach made it clear. She said most of these kids are being mutilated. They have their feet cut off, they have their hands cut off, they have their ears cut off, there's sections of skin removed. And now this is a history with them that goes all the way back to the 40s. That I can track them to. I mean, and you can always tell when MS is involved. When it's just Klein, it's usually suffocation or asphyxiation, strangulation, or some form of a firearm used. When there's mutilation involved, that's usually the two of them together. MS has a background from World War II, front lines, Okinawa, dealt with 1,500 cadavers overseas. When he came back, he enrolled in USC. His first course was actually dissecting a cadaver. So, I mean, there's a great deal I don't want to release or disclose because of our documentary. Yeah. But when we do this, there's going to be, we're rewriting history here. Whenever I finally show this to the public, my findings, a lot of people, what they thought they knew about the Zodiac and DC Phantom and OCCK, All these things, the serial killers that were never caught, they're going to be in awe.
All right, we definitely looking forward to that.
There's a question from one of the commenters asking, where is Klein buried?
Klein's buried actually in Riverside Cemetery, and on his actual, I guess he's in a tomb. He's not buried beneath ground. It says "will not be forgotten," which is ironic because in his letters he says, "Do not forget me."
And tell us one more time about this documentary that's coming out, the name of it, when people can look forward to seeing it, where they can find it, all that information. Because I want to see the documentary. I'm dying to see this.
That would be DeWayne's department.
All right, DeWayne, talk to me.
So we began filming this month, the end of the month, we began production. And we will be doing this completely and totally independent. So how we're going to do it is we're going to basically release it on social media, and we'll be doing it in installments. The first installment, we plan on it being 45 minutes to an hour, and it will be based around the links between the Oakland County child murders, the Atlanta child murders, and the Freeway Phantom murders. It's going to be very, very well done, very well put together, and we're going to be able to give the complete truth because this won't be controlled by any sort of network or anything like that. So these type of platforms that you've given us is very important. We thank you for this as well because we have to get the word out because the powers that be don't want this to come out, and we'll be able to not only explain a lot of the things that Alex and I have been talking about today, but we'll be able to give a greater perspective as to why something like this becomes such a big deal as far as Wayne getting out of prison. It's way bigger than people may think it is. It's not just because of the politics around it in the city of Atlanta, and it's not just because of him getting out. So I don't want to give too much away, but we'll be able to really go all the way in and explain so many things that not only took place in this case or in these cases, but so many things that people need to be socially and politically aware of as it pertains to the legal justice system or the criminal justice system.
And the narratives that they put out, I think it's important. I got a question. It's an independent project, which means it costs money. Is there a Cash App, a Venmo, PayPal? How can people make donations? Because I'm so interested. I got to see this project. So
So what we were actually anticipating on doing is we were actually anticipating on waiting until the first installment to begin to ask people for our help because we want to actually show the quality that we're going to be putting into this and the extensiveness that we're going to make sure, this time that this is just not something run of the mill or the average brush over that has taken place in the past with not only the Atlanta child murders, because for those that are unaware of the other murders that he's been telling you about, the same thing has happened with the Oakland County child murders. The same thing has happened with the murders that took place in DC. It's like it keeps getting, pushed to the side, and they may talk about it on news coverage here and there to bring it back to the forefront for a little while, then they push it to the side again. So we actually want to do something that's going to be groundbreaking and definitive and will change the narrative and the landscape on how people view public cases like this, and then also how people view documentary filmmaking, because me and him have the same motto in the sense that we both always try to impress upon people that when somebody is telling you something, you need to be listening for what they're not telling. Because somebody could be telling you the truth, right? but they could be excluding this much more of the truth by just giving you this much of the truth.
Right.
You
The
know,
partial truth.
Right.
Right. And also we have a group called the Zodiac Connection on Facebook.
Correct.
And we also have a Facebook page associated with it. But anybody who wants to learn more can you know, you'll always see posts on my page and Alex's page from the things that we put in the group. But anybody that wants to learn more, they can join that group, the Zodiac Connection, and they could basically be abreast with everything that we'll be doing.
All right.
That's correct. Yeah.
So tell me how people are going to be able to contribute once that first installment is the money is at. Listen,
So this is
people have to be willing to go into their pocket
correct.
and sacrifice. So I know you said it's going to come, but how can we're going to follow you on the Zodiac Connection, but I want to make sure people understand.
Well,
the cost for everything.
Yeah, and what we will do collectively is we'll huddle up this evening and we'll try to figure out the best mechanism, whether it's a GoFundMe or whatever it is. We'll try to figure it out because me and him are getting ready to buy some plane tickets and hotel rooms and everything. And he just spent a lot of money to come to Atlanta and had this very, very expensive hotel room. So we have been coming out our own pocket to do what we've been doing at this point.
Well, it's for the families.
Yeah.
The number one thing is the families, and for Wayne's a byproduct. Once I got into it and found out exactly what was going on, Wayne's innocence was a byproduct.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So you look at that whole situation, and I was talking to DeWayne about this before. You got all of these documentaries coming out, the Innocence Project, with all these people that look like us sitting behind bars for crimes that they didn't commit.
That's
so
correct.
When we do part 2, we can get more into the justice system and a little bit more about the stuff you were talking about the pedophile stuff, DeWayne. So we can get more into that though, definitely though. But it was a pleasure, and just like D-Mall said, however we can help, and if you want to leave those apps though, we can get the ball rolling, because this is important information that needs to be seen. So
absolutely,
we appreciate it, guys. We'll get something up and going, and we'll post it on the internet for us, so you guys can see it. Anybody that wants to contribute, it'd be appreciated. We're trying, like I said, we're trying to do this for the families. It's not for our benefit. We're not pocketing any monies.
Right.
We want to bring some kind of closure, if possible, to the families.
Right.
Some of these people out here, they're absolute warriors. You got people like Yusuf Bell's mother. You have Catherine Leach. This woman got on TV. She's the one that actually moved me when I saw her speech, calling out to anybody that could hear her voice to please help her. That lit a fire under my butt. Okay, I want to help this woman. I want to help all the other mothers and other family members. And there's a gentleman by the name of Barry King he lost his son Timothy King in the Oakland murders. And this man's an absolute warrior too. I've watched some of his new documentary series. If you haven't seen it, guys, you should tune in. It's on YouTube. This man does not accept no for an answer.
Mm-hmm.
He's come out of his pocket apparently over $10,000 trying to retrieve files just to find the truth about what happened to his son. God love him.
Right.
We hopefully in the end, when this is all said and done, gentlemen, there's going to be a lot of families that know the truth.
Good. And that's really important. Me, I was a kid. I think I was in middle school, 1980s. No, high school. So we heard all about that. And I tell you, I don't think anybody in my family believed that Wayne Williams did it, to be honest with you. I remember growing up and hearing my parents talking about, my aunts talking about it. It was a community conversation, probably in communities across the country.
Right.
So I got to say thank you. If my parents were alive, they'd probably say thank you for confirming what they believed. Right. And I think these types of projects are so important because when things happen, major media outlets, law enforcement, government, they tend to control the narrative and the stories. They create this imagery, they put it out there, and we buy it. But thank God for social media, we can actually respond to some of that. And then with the work of professionals like yourself, man, listen, we could debunk a whole lot of that stuff. So I mean, again, I'm gonna keep talking about the fact that folks need to support this effort, not just wait to watch the video, but to support it to make sure that it's completed in time for us to watch it. So I gotta say thank you, and thank you. I love what you guys are doing.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate you having us.
Before we go, I just want to say one thing to the people that are listening. It's very important for people to understand. Wayne Williams is the only child, and I want the parents, I want people who have family members to imagine, you being a parent and you being a school teacher. Both of them were school teachers, and these people educated children in the city of Atlanta that ended up threatening them, literally threatening them later on in life, kids that they taught in elementary school and things of that nature because of what Wayne was accused of. They had to put signs up in their front yard, saying don't judge us and things of that nature. And they eventually had to leave the city of Atlanta. So
we want to try to give Wayne some kind of a salvage of a lot of what's left.
And both his parents passed away when they passed away. Is that correct?
Correct.
And he didn't get a chance. Yeah, this has to be some justice. So listen, for real, man, the truth unveiled. And as D Moss, man, would tell you, as talking to him prior, you guys are the first guest on this show, and you guys inspired. DeWayne, you guys inspired us to name it The Truth Unveiled. Daryl Moss named it because we want to reveal the truth to the people. But it was because of you guys, man, and stories like this is why this will happen, and why this documentary and these series that we're going to do are very important.
Absolutely. And Jalen, what's his name? Jalen Baber says
that's correct.
All right. You can go to facebook.com/freewayne99. Again, freewayne99, and follow them, man. It's like, don't let it stop with this conversation. Folks are watching. I know it's interesting, but you have to be more than interested. We need people to be vested, committed, and follow through on this, because it's at this point, now that we know about it, my dad would say, now that you know, you can't go to your grave saying you didn't know. And now that you know, we all have a vested responsibility to support this effort in some capacity, because if a brother went to jail for no reason at all, we're all locked up until he's so I'll put it like
there's no one is free as others are oppressed.
Absolutely.
If you go to the Zodiac.com, gentlemen, there's other cases I'm involved with currently, or we're involved in. There's some like the Stowe murder that happened in Atlanta. Actually, I believe it was the day that Wayne was convicted. Gentleman had filled in as a bouncer at a bar. There was an altercation, went out, and he was shot point blank, and his perpetrator got away also. And his son's been working with me. I've been looking at his case for about 4 months now, zoning in on that. And there's other ones also. I can name them all night long. But if you go to the website, you look at it, you'll get to see some of it. I'm trying to help the Stowe family find some kind of answers, I guess, here for them.
Tommy Stowe.
Yeah, Tommy Stowe, man. This is a horrific crime that is, again, it's been swept under the rug, unfortunately. Him and his mother need answers. And I'm going to try to get them for him. But, aside from the At-Kid project or small projects I'm working on, they're kind of listed there on the website. And there's additional ones I'll be adding. So you guys tune in, take a look, see what you see. If you have any questions, please post them. I'll be more than happy to answer them for you. And I want to thank you guys.
All right, we appreciate you.
Before we sign off, what was the name of that last group? You said we could follow some of your work in which group?
It's the Zodiac Connection.
Okay, I got it up. Okay, I just want to make sure we got it right.
All right, no problem, guys.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank y'all.